Well,
Hello, everybody. Let me make myself visible. Can people see me? Yes. Cool. How's everybody doing today? Looks like it's going to be a nice day.
good.
Doing good. Good afternoon, Professor.
Good.
Yeah, they're expecting rain.
Good.
Good. Thanks for responding. Connection prevented me to join the other day. Okay, Ellen. Yeah. Oh, and actually, I haven't put it up, so I'll put up the class for Monday. I'm realizing I didn't put up Monday's class, but I'll put it up. So Monday we had what we did. We read the play Ruby of Elsinore. That's mainly what we did on Monday. And if you weren't in class, you should definitely read the play. I would love to see the play produced at some point. I had suggested it to the humanities department that do a series of one acts or short plays, but they've got their own agenda. But so I want to thank all the students that participated yesterday and read on Monday and read. So thank you for your participation and for helping to bring the characters of Ruby and Hamlet and Ophelia and the Queen and the King Claudius and the Ghost to life. So thank you for your time and for your reading. So we're gonna continue today. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the play, Ruby of Elsinore. We're going to do that today. I'm also going to share with you, so I mentioned to you all that that the next essay will be the essay on this play on Ruby of Elsinore. So I'm going to have the prompts for that ready. The paper's not due until May 3rd, but I know some of you want to get started on it. So I'm going to share that prompt with all of you, so you'll have it. So you'll have it, and you'll be able to get started early on it. I mean, it's not, I keep saying it's a lot of time. It's not really, it's about a week and a half you have. So you have this weekend and you have next weekend and next week to work on it. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to, from next week, we'll begin focusing more on the research paper, and which will be the last assignment that you would need to do on May 10th. And then, and that's it. Then we're going to be wrapping up the semester with talking about slam poetry and spoken word. And there isn't a paper or anything on that that's mainly informational. And depending on what we need to do, if I can get a poet to come visit us, our class, come visit our class, I'll have someone come if they're available, and then we'll prepare for the final exam. And that's going to be our semester. So let's continue with Ruby of Elsinore. Does anybody can anybody tell me, if I said give me a synopsis or tell me what the play is about? What would you say? Or you could write it, or unmute yourself and tell me. What is Ruby of Elsinore about? Tell me what the play is about. I know we all read it together. Okay. Well, one thing that's important when you're going to write your papers is that you be able to formulate a synopsis of it, right? So you should figure out how to, or there's an opportunity for you to share what you think the play is about. Okay. Your silence and the silence in the chat. Okay. Okay. A very dramatic, or Alan's making it 10. Yeah, it's very dramatic. All right. So let's, in case you were not here, I think most of you all were all here, looking at the names. So so essentially the play takes place in a hair salon, right, in Elsinore, which is the castle where Hamlet lives in Denmark. And the hair salon is run by a woman named Ruby. And Ruby then has one-on-one kind of sessions with each of the characters, several characters from Shakespeare, including Ophelia and the Queen and King Claudius and Hamlet himself. And then the last person is the ghost, right? So in terms of, so that's basically what the play is about. So it's a play about, it takes place in a salon. There's a hairdresser named Ruby, and then there's characters that come from Shakespeare. Now we know that Ruby is a character because we gave the synopsis of Shakespeare's Hamlet, that she is not in that play. So she's the only character that is not in Hamlet. All the other characters are. So one of the things that one of the activities that we did with the Buddha principle when we were writing the fiction essay was a kind of a character study, right, or characterization. So you were asked to look at characters through personality, to their role, etc. And that some of you did that with your papers. And I will talk about your papers today too, because I graded all the ones that were submitted. So, so you were talking about characterization, like how do you learn about characters? And you learn about them through what they say and how they behave. And so if we were to look at Ophelia, you would say that, there's something naive about her, like she says Hamlet's going to marry her, but she hasn't asked him to marry her. And where did she get the idea about that? She's trying to be protective of Hamlet. So, you could see how, Ophelia's young, and Ruby makes reference to that several times, like that she doesn't know much about dealing with men. And so, we could get the sense that Ophelia is young, that Ophelia is naive, that we know she's in love with Hamlet. We know that she's kind of has this fantasy that she's going to be with him. When we got to the Queen, there was all of this discussion about sex with the Queen. So Bruce Kane characterized the Queen as very, like, sexual, or wanting, or a very sexual person. Like she had all these words for describing sex, and she's also like a little snooty or snotty, and doesn't even remember Ruby's name, and calls her Rosie, and calls her Rhonda, and calls her Rhoda, and calls her all these names by the letter R, but her own name. And then we have so the Queen is both like very sexual and also snooty and dismissive, right? And we can make up a whole bunch of other descriptive characteristics on the Queen. Then we had, after the queen, we had the king come in, and he's kind of like a stud, and he's like talking to Ruby, and talking about how he's trying to be faithful, but then she says, "What's her name?" He names someone who he's messing with over at the castle, um, and um, and we know that he was plotting to be king from it. So he's slick, he's conniving, he's a player, right? So there's all this characterization. When we get to Hamlet, and we kind of know more about Hamlet in general, but then Hamlet, we know that he's indecisive, and we learn that through how he behaves, like from the to be or not to be when he speaks. Should I have bangs? Should I have a ponytail? Should I sit up? Should I sit down? Should I kill my father? Should I not kill my father? He lives in the world of indecision, right? And inside of this indecision, it makes it difficult for him to take action, right? And then so that's another thing that happens with his characterization. And then we meet the ghost, and the ghost wants to just talk about all the amazing things that he's done and how he wants his son to revenge his death and all that kind of stuff. So 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 there's a lot of characterization that happens inside of the play, right? And that happens in fiction, that happens when you read a story, you learn about the characters through their activity, their actions, and how other characters see them as well. So so we heard about Hamlet from the queen when she mentions the play. We hear about Hamlet from the king when he mentions the play. And there's that whole thing about the play within the play, and as a ploy to trap the king to see if he actually killed his father, to try to see if he's guilty. So, and all of those plot elements come from Shakespeare, right? The idea of Ophelia wanting Hamlet and Hamlet rejecting her, the idea of the play within the play, the fact that the king, Claudius, married his brother's wife right after the brother died, the fact that that Claudius killed him, the ghost reveals that at the end, confirms that at the end. Um, so there's all these plot elements that exist in Ruby of Elsinore that are the same in Hamlet, right? And so Hamlet was set in at the time period that Hamlet is set is where Ruby of Elsinore is set, right? That's the idea. And that was like in the 1300s, like the 14th or 15th century. So essentially a long time ago, right? It was set up in the 13th or 14th century. And so we're in the 21st century, right? So you got to think it was set, if we went to the 15th, like 600 years ago, right? And so one of the important things, the fun things that Bruce Kane was doing, he was trying to play with time, right? So you set a play back in the 1600s, the 14th or 1500s, and um, and he um, and he put in this character of Ruby, right? This character that talks like she's from the South, right? She's like, "Honey, let me tell you," you know. So she kind of has this sassy, way of talking and sassy way of relating to people, even the kings and queens that come into her salon to get their hair done. So, so she's sassy. She is, you know, she does all. There's all these references, right? Because I just said it's set back in the, even if we just said let's settle in the 15th century, that there were a lot of things that didn't exist in the 15th century that they're making reference to in the play, right? And I think we mentioned a couple of them. Like one of them was, as we were reading them, at one point she says, "You're a prince, you're the king," and then it says she does an Elvis move. Any of you who know Elvis Presley was considered the king of rock and roll, and people referred to him as Elvis as the king. So, so there was this move he used to make, like the signature move, almost like Saturday Night Fever, like pointing his finger up, and this dance move. So when she mentions the king, she does the Elvis move, right? That was one. Earlier on in the piece, when Ophelia is asking, when she says that she's going to marry a prince, she goes, "What prince? Who's the prince?" She goes, "You better check him out." She goes, "You better Google him or run a background check." Now we all know Google did not exist in the Google didn't exist almost like 20 years ago, right? But Google did not exist back then. I'm sorry, when I pause this because I'm trying to let somebody into the classroom. Um, and so And so inside of the piece, inside of the theater piece, inside of the play, she peppers them with different things. There's different sayings, of course. At one point, she says, what happens at Ruby stays at Ruby's. And that's a sense what people say, what happens in Vegas stays at Vegas. That's the most popular one, right? She, at one moment, when they're talking about that Hamlet saw his father's ghost, she's like, well, what's wrong with him? What's this I see dead people stuff? And we shared in class that was a reference to a movie called The Sixth Sense, which I think came out in the 90s, or maybe the 2000s, came out a long time ago. And how that movie, how she's making that reference to that movie. At one point, he pulls out, the king says, call me, and gives her his card. And later on in the piece, she pulls out the cell phone while Hamlet is speaking and calls the king on his cell phone. So we know there were no cell phones back in the day, right? So that is a technique, right? That happens in fiction and plays and movies, right? And that's when they take something and they call it an anachronism, right? I'm going to write it in the chat really quickly. Where's the chat? The words you can. Oops, doing it in all caps. Right, I just put the word anachronism in the chat. And essentially, I'm just trying to get a little more comfortable in this chair. So essentially, the anachronism is when something is out of time. Like chrono is about time. The word, the phrase in the word chrono, CHRONO. Chrono means time. So anachronism means something that's out of time, right? And so there's a lot of references. Even having a hair salon is probably out of time. The hair salon itself, the character Ruby herself is an anachronism because the character like that did not exist or talk like that back in the day, right? Chronological, right? Exactly. Chronological means in order, right? So so all those references, the cell phone, the Google, the back check, all that stuff is anachronistic, right? So they're like that means that they're out of time, out of sync, out of time. So I wonder, what do people have any thoughts about what I'm saying, or any questions about the play that you're going to be working on the prompt for? No, everybody's good. You're pretty silent today. Like some of you, you were all talking at the beginning to say hello, so not completely silent. I just want to make sure that it's reaching you, because now if I Tarzan swing and show you, maybe that will be the thing that may raise some questions. But I'm going to share with you the prompt, okay, or the assignment. I'll show you the assignment that's due on May 3rd, okay? Yeah, Ruby is definitely a modern girl, or a modern woman, because she's an adult, right? So she's a modern woman. All right, so let me get it up, or open up it's right in here, so I can share it right away. So I'm gonna share my screen. I love that it's green. It's green so I can see it quickly. So so this will be, I'll put this on to Blackboard and open up a, and then I'll show you how to do this, right? So due Monday, May 3rd is a drama essay. And the instructions, you're going to answer one of the following exam questions or prompts. Let me just change that to prompt. Following questions, right? Let me just say that. And support your interpretation with evidence gained from a close reading and analysis of the text. Your response should be a multi-paragraph essay that follows the conventions of standard English grammar and usage, as well as MLA in-text citation rules for the quotation of literary works. So that's the new thing that's going to be added to this. Some of you did that with your fiction essay, you did some in-text citation. So we're not going to talk about in-text citation today. We're going to do instruction of that next week. But and if you work on your paper this weekend, that's something you can add next week. But the in-text citation is the new thing that you're going to have to add to the fiction essay, and then you definitely will have to do in the research paper. And if you decide to do a revision of your fiction or your poetry, I'm going to ask you to do it in there as well. Okay, so you're gonna have to answer one of these two questions, right, for your essay. And this is a little different because the other ones are like, just look at elements of poetry, look at elements of fiction and write about it, right? This is different, right? This is giving you a question that you have to respond to. So the first question says, and I'll make it a little bigger if I can. Let's see, yeah, I have to hit the percentage. All right, so the first question is, Bruce Cain's Ruby of Elsinore has characters, excuse me, and events based on Shakespeare's play Hamlet, right? Which is set in the late Middle Ages, 14th and 15th century, or 1300 to 1499. In and around mostly the royal palace in Elsinore, a city in Denmark, right? So Bruce Cain's play is based then. So although Ruby of Elsinore is set in the time period as Hamlet, the author plays with time by including phrases, ideas, and other items that are from a modern world. Identify and explain at least 3 occurrences of modernization in Ruby of Elsinore. I could say modernization or anachronisms, right? The same thing in Rubies of Elsinore, right? So the first question is asking you to look at the play and to write an essay where you identify the modernization or the anachronisms in Ruby of Elsinore. And it's saying to explain at least 3 occurrences, right? So the question sets it up, right? And then it asks you what to do, right? Identify and explain. So it's not enough to say, they mentioned Google, explain what it is and explain why Google makes it an anachronism, right? We said the whole entire character of Ruby, she could be an anachronism herself, right? So it's asking you to look at that and to explain that, to write an essay about that, right? That's question number 1. So you say you want to do that, you're good, you write your paper, you're done. Let's say that one, you're like, well, professor, tell me about the other option. Let's hear the other option. So here's the other option, all right? In Ruby of Elsinore by Bruce Cain, in Ruby of Elsinore, Bruce Cain creates a central character, Ruby, the hairdresser, who is not a character in Shakespeare's Hamlet, upon which the short play is based. Cain uses Ruby's language to inform the reader of her personality traits. Identify and explain at least 3 personality traits attributed to the character of Ruby in the play. Okay, so the first question is asking you to look at the anachronisms that I just talked about moments before I began this section. And the second question is basically asking you to do a character analysis, which some of you did before, but is asking you to focus on the character analysis of Ruby. And it's also specifically asking you to see how language informs the personality trait. And then again, this is identify and explain. So identify is that you say, this is what it is, and explain means you explain it, right? You give the rationale. So you have to find at least 3 different personality traits, right? For the character of Ruby. So this is, again, in terms of responding to a prompt, it's important to be clear with all the vocabulary, so you make sure you understand what is being said, and also what is being asked of you, right? So it's saying identify and explain. So you're asking you to do at least two things with every body paragraph. You're going to identify and explain. Then it's telling you that it says at least, right? At least 3 occurrences. So if you did 5 occurrences, or 5 personality traits in it, would that be okay? Yes, right? Because it's saying you have to do at least 3. If you did 2, is that okay? The answer would be no, right? Because it's saying at least 3. The minimum is 3. Find 3 personality traits attributed to the character of Ruby. Then you have to find at least 3. That you can find 4, you can find 5, you can find 10. That would be okay. But if you go below 3, then that's not okay because you're not following the instruction. It's not what is being asked of you. The same thing with the occasions of modernization or anachronisms. You need to identify at least and explain at least 3. Is there a question brewing?
Go with the first question.
Yeah. What about it?
it catches my interests.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I wanted you all, I think one of the students asked me on Monday if when this is going to be available. And so I said, I'll make it available today. I was going to wait till Monday, but there's no need to wait till Monday. I'll make it available today. And that way, folks, that way you know what it is. Then the rest of the document just talks about the things that how you should format the paper, which should be 3 to 5 pages. It should be MLA formatted, which is what we've been doing or I've been correcting all semester, which is a 1-inch margin around the paper. It should be double spaced. The typeface should be Times Roman or Arial, and it should be at 12 point. The first page is set up to include your name in the upper right-hand corner. Your name, my name, the class, and the date, right? And it's only on the first page. And then each page is numbered in the header with their last name and the page number. And of course, the essay should have a title. Every essay should have a title. It shouldn't be drama essay. Technically, like I said in some of your papers, technically drama essay is a title, right? But it's not descriptive. So, you know, like three anachronisms in Ruby of Elsinore, sassy, fun and sexy Ruby, the character of Ruby brings the, whatever, you know, some kind of title that describes the essay. So so that's what we have for the drama section. Really, this thing with Ruby, this essay kind of caps it off. And let's see. Ruby represents the reader in some ways. You can make a rationale for that. Could it be references in Ruby of Elsinore? I'm not sure what you mean by references. But so let me talk a little bit more about this paper. Let's see. The title. Yes, yeah, the title should be something like that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely for the title. So next week we'll talk about MLA in text citation. And so that'll be a component of this. It's important that you understand how to answer a prompt. I'm going to stop sharing. That's not up. I'm going to put that up on our Blackboard today. So the same steps that you should be doing with this I'll do the segue and talk a little bit more about what I said I would talk about today was going to be the essays and grading, right? Grading and your grades, right? So up until this moment in your class, we have had 2 formal graded essays, right? The poetry essay and the fiction essay. So it's important that you do the essay because that's going to be how you get your grade. It's not enough to come to class, right? It's not enough to even to do the assignments. The bulk of your grade are these essays that you have to write. This is a composition class. And so that's what we're doing. We're composing essays, right? So we've had one with the fiction essay. We've had a second one now first one with the poetry essay, second one with the fiction essay. So your grade, if you look at the syllabus, and let me get it up. I'm going to go back to the syllabus in a moment. I'm just going to open up a particular section. Yes. Okay. So let me share my screen again with you. Some students are asking, how am I doing? How's the grade? So if you look here on the screen, you know what I just made big. This is in your syllabus on page 5, right? And this tells you basically how the grades are constructed, right? So participating in class, like saying, yes, I'll read, talking, you know, responding in the chat, all that in class writing when we do it, if we did it, and the homework assignments that you get, you know, not the ones that you get graded on, all of that together makes 15% of your grade. The poetry essay that you wrote, the first one, is another 15%. The fiction essay, the ones that most completed and that have been graded, is 20%. The next one that you're going to write, the play essay, the drama essay, that's going to be 15%. The research project is going to be 20, and the final exam will be 15. right? So A, you need to do the assignment, because if you don't the assignment, immediately that percentage drops off. So an example is if you did not do your poetry essay, right, but you did everything else, right, 15% of your grade, the highest grade you can get is a B. That's if you did A's and everything, right? If you don't do your poetry or your fiction essay, that's 35% of the grade. Assuming you do everything else and get A's and everything else, right, that's still only giving you a D, right? So if you don't do your poetry and your fiction essay, you probably won't pass the class, right? So it's important for you to do the poetry and the fiction essays, right? It's important for you to do all of your assignments. But the poetry, the fiction, the play essay, the research project, and the final exam really are, you should do without fail. Okay, so at this moment, most of you who've done both the poetry and the fiction essay now have an opportunity, right? That you could look at one of those essays and revise it. Okay, you could do a revision. So even if you got, let's say you got a B plus on the poetry essay and an A minus or an A on the fiction essay, you might look at your poetry at the B plus and say, maybe I can revise that and maybe bring my grade up by doing that. Or some of you may have gotten a higher grade. Maybe you got a B on your poetry essay and you got a C on your fiction essay. Then you could look at one of those and you could revise it to try to bring the grade up. Okay, so yes. Okay, so it's important for you. I want to show this on grade configuration so we know that. And, many of you come to class, and I'm glad that you come to class, and it's important to do that. You don't get graded for coming to class. Unfortunately, coming to class could have negative effects, but it doesn't, what you have an opportunity to do when you're in class is participate, right? So, but it's important to get the papers done. Now, if any of you, some of you have communicated, and that's great. I'm here. If any of you need to brainstorm, if you need to meet, the writing center's there to help you revise things and create things. So I'm here. The whole idea is for you to do as well as you can in English 111, so that way you can move on to your other classes, and you get this required course completed as successfully as possible. Okay. So that's there. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so you can see that's in your syllabus. So that's how your grade gets configured by all of these little all of these different assignments, and they total up your grade. Okay, so all right, so then I want to say also, like, I graded all of the fiction essays that were submitted have been graded, so you should go to Blackboard and take a look at them. If you have any questions, you should definitely reach out to me, or send me an email. We can set up office hours, and we could meet and talk about the papers. And it's important because, especially before you do your drama essay, I will say that the good thing I will say about the class in general, I'm going to talk about a couple of things in general. The good thing about the class in general is that there were no earned Fs, right? That means nobody earned an F. And I think maybe even with the fiction essays, nobody even got a D, which is great, right? Most of the grades there were A's, and there was a hope from A all the way to like C minus, right? There was the spectrum. If you've got a 0, that means that I saw plagiarism, or that Turnitin saw significant amount of plagiarism in the paper. And I said to the class, the most important thing to remember about Turnitin is that it was designed for that, right? It examines encyclopedias, it does Gradekeeper, it does student essays that are submitted to other universities that may exist online. And it really does this search. And the whole idea is not to be punitive, but really, you're here to learn, right? You're here to learn to write the best you can and do the best you can. And there are services that also offers tutoring in the Writing Center. You have me, I offer myself. So there's at least support available to you to write the best papers that you can. That's what I want. I want you all to be good writers, because being good writers means, writing essays is also about how do you organize your thoughts, how do you make a presentation, how do you pitch yourself, right? You know, when eventually you're out in going, I'm not saying the real world, I was going to say that, when you're just looking for jobs, because most of us are living in the real world, you know, and working and going to school. But when you're want to get a really good job, you want to figure out how you present yourself. That's about like, how do you organize your thoughts, right? How do you answer a question when someone asks you a question? You just got two questions, one of which just have to pick one to answer. How well do you answer that question, right? In class, you get a higher grade. In the world, you might get a job, right? Might be the difference between you and the person that's coming next to have that interview, or the person who just left the room. So think of, you know, writing essays as that way, that it's really definitely it's part of the composition class, but really it's a skill that has, you know, just a lot of repercussions in your life, you know, in terms of like being able to write well. So take advantage of me and of the situation who says, yeah, I'm here, I'll work with you, for you to try to do the best that you can with it. Okay. So that's that. So you have your prompt. I'm going to open up the sure. I'm going to open up I'm going to put it on Blackboard, so you'll have the prompt for this weekend. So you can begin writing your Ruby of Elsinore. If you have questions, come on Monday. I'm stopping class just a little early. Well, a lot of early today. I was going to just stop a half hour early, just in case people wanted. We're not sure where they were in terms of their grades. I have like a grade book, and I know who has done their poetry essays and who's done their fiction essays and what grades they've gotten. There's a couple students who have not submitted work and who have not come to class. So at this point in the semester, not only am I sending out stuff, the English department will start contacting them to figure out like what's going on, to see if there's anything we can do to support them to try to, you know, pass the semester. So yes. So I am going to be quiet now and ask if anybody has questions about anything I've shared today, about Ruby, about grading, about what's coming up next. Any questions?
I think we're good, Professor.
Okay. All right. So if you're good and you don't have any questions, then you know we'll be done. We're done early today. But I'm gonna stay here if anybody wants to talk now. Definitely go look at your essays right now. I'll stay here, and if you know, we'll put people in a waiting room, and I can have, you know, one-on-ones. So if you're
Are the grades for the essay posted in the grades area, or the posted as comments
in the comments. So when you go to you
discussions?
you open it up and you scroll to the bottom. I mean, you'll see a number. The number corresponds to the grade. There's a grade on the chart that has it, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome, Christian.
Have a good week. Yeah. Have a good weekend, Professor. Take care.
All right, Christian.
Bye-bye.
Take care, Kayla. Alan, you said you're curious. Yeah, just people should take a moment to take a look at go to Turnitin and see their grades, if you haven't already.
Professor,
Yes.
for this essay, do you have to submit it to turn in, or that other thing we do use to get
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, the same thing.
Okay, all right, I got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure.
You got any questions? No. All right.
Right. The drama essay is for Ruby of Elsinore, right? Not Hamlet, because we didn't read Hamlet, right? And so the prompts, Catherine, both say Ruby of Elsinore, Ruby of Elsinore. So it's about the play. So I believe you were here, right, on Monday, but definitely in a part of the preparation for the essay, you should just read it again. It's a short play, and that way you could do the things that you need to do to prepare for it. All right, good. So Carlos, let me hold on a second. Let me check your, let's see. Thank you, Adrian. So Carlos, you should have seen it on your paper. On the paper that I sent back to you on it. Let me see if I could, let me see if I have it handy. English. Check one more place. I'm just checking, Carlos. Oh. So Carlos, for some reason in my grade book, are you still here? All right, I'm gonna put everybody in the chat for a moment. I mean, yes, in the waiting room. All right, Carlos, so it's just you and me. I have a grade in my book, but I see that you submitted it on the 22nd. So I'm a little confused. So I don't think I graded it. So that might be right, but it's so strange why I have it. And
Yeah, I did a big mistake because at first I emailed you the essay a long time ago. I
Right.
forgot to put it in the discussion board.
All right, but then did I email it back to you?
No, I don't think so.
Let me look really quickly. Just tell me what is your, let's see, where's that? Here we go. Do you use your Ostos email? Is that the email you use?
It's Carlito MOB 25 at Gmail.
Okay. It comes from like CG Entertainment, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you never got a response. You never got anything from me.
No.
All right. So I'll do that today. I'll grade it and send it back to you today.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Have a great day.
You too.